Welcome to the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Eaton Homestead channel. As you can see, we are not at the Eaton Homestead. We are at my very best friend in the whole wide world's house and her garden. This is my friend Kate.
Hi.
Kate and I have been best friends since kindergarten.
Yes.
Yeah, which we only realized in adulthood that not everybody has a best friend since kindergarten.
Yeah. Sad.
It is sad.
It is sad.
I just thought that was like the normal thing. Like everybody should have a kindergarten best friend that you grow up with, but it's rare and it's special.
Yeah. You're rare and special.
Oh. So Kate and I are both really amateur gardeners.
Very amateur.
Yeah. Just been doing it for the past few years. What?
Sorry, my daughter wants a 16th dairy-free Rice Krispie treat, of which I'm going to give her because we're vlogging.
Why not? You'll pay for it later.
Yes, I will.
So we are still fairly new to gardening and learning a lot, just sharing our lessons along the way.
Yeah, and successes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And learning how to garden in Maine.
And that's kind of true to like how we've lived our lives a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, even if we're at, did you see that?
Yeah.
Lovely. Welcome to the garden. Even if we have been on kind of different paths in life, we always share what's going on and learn from each other and kind of are able to maybe avoid some of the pitfalls or kind of see the rocks ahead.
Right.
So that's been nice with gardening too.
Yeah.
To kind of see like what works for you, what works for me. Although I will say I live in a different town than Danielle and she's a bit farther north. You know, geographically,
yeah.
I'm not the best. Than I am. And so I do think slightly different things work in your yard than work in my yard as far as like what thrives.
Right. And like all the different soil conditions and stuff that we have or that you've brought in.
Yeah.
And made.
Yeah.
Because you have all raised beds, right?
I do have all raised beds.
Yeah.
Yes, I have no in-ground space here. And that's mostly just because I took a portion, the back left-hand side of our yard, and kind of created an enclosed garden space. And I wanted to do it mostly for free, mostly. And so free or used. So I found fencing like out on Facebook Marketplace and got that pretty cheap. And then I used mostly pallets for the raised bed and just ripped apart every pallet. Honestly, I saved a lot in just reusing the nails and screws and the pallet boards and pallets themselves. I have a herb garden in a pallet. That has been really helpful. You know, the cattle panels and the T-posts and things like that were bought and obviously not used because, I mean, these days, COVID times, I can't find them actually anywhere. I wanted to do one more archway and I wasn't able to yet. And you know, the zip ties. We use a lot of zip ties in my garden. So those things we bought. But for the most part, the actual structure of the garden is all used or reclaimed or... And I think in general, that's like my style. So you will find that throughout my home too. But in the garden especially, it just feels like really calming to be reusing things. And it also feel, you know, I'm like big into legacy stuff. Like I wish I could follow the journey of a thing. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like when you find, like when I found those chicken feeders.
Yeah.
And someone had gotten them from someone's farm, blah, 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 blah. And they ended up in my possession and I haven't even really figured out how to use them all yet. But it's like, God, I wish I could see the life these have lived.
Right.
And like everywhere they've gone until they made it into a planter in my garden.
Right.
But anyway, so little things like that I find have like an extra tingle to them because they've been used before. So I really enjoy reclaiming things and kind of in my space having used items. And every once in a while there's a new thing, frankly, just because I couldn't find it used.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And when you say that you used things like pallets and that you tore them apart and you reused the boards and you reused the nails, she really means that she did it.
Yeah.
Like, your husband helped a little bit.
Yeah, but my husband generally gets annoyed with my projects. And not because it's a honey-do list, because I used to make honey-do lists, which I found were the opposite of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Constructive?
No, yes, sort of, but like they're time consuming. Honey-do lists are time consuming. What's the effective?
Right.
Less effective to make a honey-do list than to just do it your damn self.
Right.
So my motto is like, if I can't do it yet, right, Livy? I'm gonna learn how, because it doesn't help me to wait until he gets home during cranky time for my kiddos and like dinner time and bath time and be like, oh, by the way, can you go out there and do this thing with me?
Right.
That doesn't happen in our household. And so I did a lot of that in the very beginning. Like putting in most of the fencing was a job that I did with my husband. And actually, originally this garden was kind of just that U-shaped bed.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
It was just one raised bed that I had my husband help me with, because I love taking on 1.5 million things. Like, it's the way I run my life. I love being like so busy that it's stressful.
Yeah.
That's like where I thrive. That's my wheelhouse. And not everybody in my life loves that.
Right.
And so this one bed was kind of like, let's see how you like gardening, Kate.
Yeah.
Because you have lots of things you'd love to be an expert at, and you try lots of things.
Yeah.
Let's just see how you like to garden.
Right.
So we did the garden, and it was so successful. It was like 4 items though, right?
Right.
So it was like, it was really successful for green beans, peas, summer squash, and zucchini. And I remember I ended up having like 11 summer squash and zucchini plants, because I had no idea that each plant made like
Right.
1 million summer squash and zucchini. So we gave out like hundreds of summer squash and zucchini that year because we could not eat it all. Some of it's still in my freezer from 3 years ago, which needs to be thrown out. Like, that's how bad it was. And I didn't even really know what I was doing yet. So it didn't taste the best it could either. Like picking it too late and having the skin be hard and things like that. So it was just that one bed. And then the next year, I'm a nurse, so a couple of my nursing friends at work wanted to have kind of like a local co-op together. So they helped me rip the pallets and save the nails and the screws and build the beds and go get the cow manure and spread it and all of this stuff, right? All the planting and the weeding that one year the 2 girls helped me with. They didn't realize how much work it was going to be, along with myself, and I still really enjoyed it, and they kind of moved on. So I always welcome them back to come pick and harvest and have fun in the garden. It turned from that year, which was really about like functionality and practicality, into like a space that I wanted to enjoy myself in.
Right.
And I remember, you know, we love Jess from Roots and Refuge.
Right.
And I remember her saying, like, you can't just build a garden and work the garden because you need the food. Because if you do that, it's too much work to enjoy it, and you'll end up wanting to quit.
Right.
And it won't be enjoyable. And
Right.
and I spend a ton of time out here every day. So whether it's just watering or whatever, because I definitely don't spend enough time to keep like the weeds at bay. That doesn't
Forget
happen
that.
in my house. But anyway, so it's just a space I really love to enjoy myself in. So any things that we've kind of built on from last year were less practical and more magical. I find it to be a magical space.
That's some
It kind of-
whimsy.
It does. Don't you think when you're sitting in your garden at night,
yeah.
sometimes like at that dusky level,
Yeah.
it feels like fairies live here.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. They totally do.
It definitely feels like I leave and things just happen at night.
Yes.
Like all the growth happens.
Yes.
Also, there is an evil villain chipmunk in my garden, and he makes things happen at night. I can't even tell you. I'm going to show you a couple little weird things in the garden, but I think he shits seeds in like so many places. I have weird things growing in lots of weird places. Very odd. But anyway, so we have a more of a hate relationship right now. But I can't find a trap that's humane. So I'm just going to allow him to continue our fairy tale. He's the villain.
Romance.
Yeah, it's an interesting gig he's got here, but he has a lot of things to eat apparently.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that I definitely learned this year, and I find it interesting that even the way you laid out your garden is more whimsical.
yes.
Like the way that I laid out my garden is so straight and so gridded, and I mean that's how I generally like things. I like things to be even and balanced and just very straight.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I realized this year was like no matter how much I try to like keep everything in order, the garden doesn't want to be in order. Like
No,
the
it
garden
doesn't.
just goes wild.
Yes.
And you can trellis and you can square foot garden your little heart out,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's gonna do what it wants to do.
Even the germination, right?
Right.
Like you can square foot plant everything
Right.
and like 3 pop up.
Well,
in
that's
weird
just it, right? And then I go back and I put a green bean or something else.
Fill the space, right? Tickle, tickle. Yeah, no, it definitely just does what it wants to do. And I actually really love that about it. So yeah, I guess I did lay out my garden a little bit differently. Although I will say, the U-shaped bed that originated my garden was facing where the sun rises and falls, which is not in line organizationally with my yard. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like kitty cornered in my yard, in the back corner. So then when we put a square fence around it, it was this diagonally shaped bed, which didn't lend to this evenly squared off garden space. If you just took that bed and turned it, everything would be even. I think it's just the way that I put my trellises and the way that I kind of trellis things along the edges as well. And then once you add a table and lights, it feels more chaotic than it is. But like you said, the plants lend to the chaos. It's this beautiful chaos in here. Like it just is this. Just look at the pumpkins. Like just seeing some of the things that trellis. It's the way I trellis my tomatoes is very straight lined. Like everything's this far apart and it's trellised up, and I prune the crap out of it. But then you add a crop of voluntold sunflowers and it's like it changes the way everything feels, or those pumpkins or the zucchini or whatever that grows wild and that you can't really tame. And that's kind of the beauty of it. That's life. Yeah. You're not having another Rice Krispie treat.
All right, should we like walk around and look at things?
Yeah, maybe I can like do a little garden tour.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I'll start with the structure. So this kind of back portion or front corner portion is all of the like reclaimed fencing that I got. And I found this like in a dump. It's a headboard and a footboard, and I spray painted them red without much else. I think I might have tried to paint strip this one, and that one I literally just spray painted over the old paint. But I found it to be so beautiful. And this is one of those items you just kind of like wonder where it came from and who slept in it and all of that. You want to know the story, but alas, you'll never know. So this life, it's a garden gate. So then you come to my entry archway. I have little like, this is I guess the whimsy of the garden for me too, is wind chimes and hummingbird feeders. I love our hummingbirds. So I have some of that kind of hanging on every archway. But this last year was only cucumbers. What I learned from that was that powdery mildew exists in a big way when you put lots of cucumbers together. So this year I learned a lot less is more. It's a lesson I don't carry into many areas of my life. But I have a couple different cucumbers on either side of these, and then I have a bush bean in between, so those will just bush out. Those won't trellis. And then pole beans on the corners. So pole beans and cukes are going to come up over this, and in just like a month, this thing is going to be covered in green. I have some, honestly, I suck at remembering the names of things, so I'm not going to remember the names, but in these little flower boxes, I have a couple different, this one's like a sage, and this one is one of the flowers that keeps things away. So I have a couple flowers everywhere. Marigolds. I have 21 varieties of tomato. This side starts our big tomatoes, and this side is my small tomatoes. So I think these are all cherry, or what do we call them? Grape.
Yeah.
Right? Saladette, whatever. They're smaller tomatoes over here. And then the other thing I didn't realize, I thought it would be more like we compost. So I thought it would be like a natural compost to just leave last year's cherry tomatoes in the garden beds and let them like rot in throughout the winter, over winter. And then I thought this spring that it would enhance the soil. I didn't realize it meant there would be 100 tomato plants that would grow.
Because the seeds are in the tomatoes.
The seeds are in the tomatoes, guys. So literally, this is not planted, but I'm letting it grow. This is not planted, but I'm letting it grow. But then this and this are the only other ones that are planted. Everything else you see has to be pulled. It is literal tomato plants.
That's heartbreaking.
I know, but what are you gonna do, right? So this is, I'll show you what I mean. This is actually from the chipmunk, evil chipmunk. There's a grub in there too, watch out for that. But do you see all the little clump of seeds?
Yeah.
So he does this and just shits seed into my garden, and then this clump of whatever will grow. It's super annoying, actually. You wouldn't think it'd be like world wrecking, but you'll see as we go. It's in every bed. Look up here.
I love that.
I don't know what this is, a sunflower or something. I'm letting it grow because I'm curious. And half of gardening is just sheer curiosity. But I have lavender, I have a couple different basils, I have parsley, I think this is dill, and I have, guys, this is not a great marker for your garden, just FYI. Oregano.
Nice.
Some oregano over here, parsleys. This parsley is doing the best. Rosemary, which smells delicious, and some sage. So I have to trellis so many things. This garden is a mess right now, but you'll see as you go, like all these little clumps are from, this is the same exact thing. Just like a ton of seeds that just got pooed into my garden and made themselves known. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. So then we have all the tomatoes that need to be pruned. They're usually way more pruned than this in my garden, and they grow really tall that way. And usually they put up a ton of fruit because they put their energy toward the fruit. So when they're really small, I prune them way back to like the 2 or 3 top leaves until they start growing bigger. And then I just prune any armpits that start to grow. I usually prune off the blooms this early, and I wait like another couple weeks to let them even put off blooms. But a couple of them, I've been a little bit lazier this year, busier with the kids. So, and you know, all of the COVID stuff. So that has just happened, but every once in a while I'll come in and prune it back. You want Dee Dee?
You want me?
Here, put your shoes on. This is for that foot. Right foot, left foot. Yeah. All right. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the garden a little bit. There are 3 different colors of marigold that we have in here. This is kind of a limey yellow. And then there's a golden yellow, and then there's the orange.
Did you get those from Polly?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I went and saw Polly the second, like literally the same day that you talked about her. Bless you, because I needed a couple things anyway. I have to watch this girl in the garden because she pulls everything out.
Yeah.
So pretty. You want to smell it?
You smell it?
Then over here is a brand new bed. This fence in the back and this footboard are brand new. We did not have this until like 2 weeks ago. Frankly, because our neighbors are new and they were getting married in their backyard last weekend, and this whole thing was like plastic green fencing, and everything else was beautiful. So from our view, you couldn't even tell, and from their view, I felt really bad that they were about to have this fancy wedding and green plastic fencing as their backdrop. So then we put this in because last year and every year I have not grown pumpkins. Now I haven't grown pumpkins because I have no in-ground space. They sprawl like crazy. And I was worried. I was worried that they would take over. So these are pumpkins. These are Jardale pumpkins and Jack Be Littles and one other type of orange pumpkin and straw flowers. Look how beautiful these are.
Those are beautiful.
So one of the things I love most about straw flowers is that they literally feel like rice paper. And if you pop the head off, they'll dry just like that and stay exactly that way. So you can do a bunch of winter crafts with them.
Oh.
So I've started doing that. And then I'm trellising the pumpkins up. Now, originally that thought process was going to be just to let 2 perfect pumpkins grow at the bottom of each plant. But there's something to be said for like not being able to kill the life that the plant creates. So now there's like this little pumpkin on the top that started, and I'm like, I can't take him off. I can't kill him. I can't do that. So now I'm just letting whatever grows happen. They're huge ass pumpkins that are not gonna stay at the top of that trellis. So I'm gonna have to bag them and tie them really well. I'm not exactly sure I'm gonna support that yet. And then if you look in here, you'll see zucchinis growing. Now I'm trying a new thing with my zucchinis where I stake it and then every once in a while tie it up to the stake and heavily prune off the leaves. As you can tell, I haven't heavily pruned anything right now because today is like the first day I'm able to spend time in the garden. So the pumpkins need to be pruned really badly, and so do the squash. But this is a big teddy bear sunflower. The head gets to be like 12 inches in diameter. Last year I had this, it regrew, it was a volunteer. I did not plant it. All right, so then I've got a bunch of peppers in with my tomatoes, because last year I found that peppers and onions did well with the tomato plants. So I really honestly don't know if the zucchini will pull too much water from the tomatoes, but the peppers did well, so I have peppers in here. I have like 3 or 4 peppers that I put in at like 2-3 inches tall that just were not tall enough and something ate them or they burnt up or whatever. I think a caterpillar got to one of them.
That happened to all mine too.
So there's a couple that are doing really well.
Did you start these or did you buy them?
I started them, and then these are a couple of yours.
Oh.
These ones are yours.
What?
Yep. And then one of these is mine, and then these ones were all started by me. So this is a mini bell.
Ooh.
This will be a ton of little tiny ones, and of course, obviously, the summer squash is taking over. I'll have to prune that back. But the summer squash, I'm gonna trellis up as well. Mini bells, and then King of the North, and this little beetle is enjoying my, what was it? King of the North, mini bell, and one other type. It's a red pepper anyway. And then a bush bean and a volunteer tomato, which is probably a yellow cherry.
They're like coming right out of the sides.
Sun
It's
gold
funny.
cherry, I think is what they are. And then if we go back and continue from the pumpkins, the rest of the tomatoes, and these are all the ones you gave me. So
Wow.
Danielle and I swapped a bunch of our starts. She had like a million bajillion different types. So these are like the blue gold, blue greens, and the tie-dyes, and all the craziness that you had given me. And in between everyone is a freaking patch of squirrel poo, or chipmunk poo, or whatever. You can see them all over the place. But anyway, the broccoli and kales and things are my like, what do they call it, brassicas, are in the front of the tomatoes. I was hoping it would shield it a bit from the sun, but as you can tell, they look a bit droopy, and they probably are less shielded than I had hoped. In the next months, when this grows literally to the top of this and takes over, hopefully it'll be a little bit more shaded. I started running a water, like a soaker hose. I'm gonna run it across the pumpkins and across all the tomatoes, and hopefully have that for an addition to water. I feel like I can never stay out here long enough to water them fully. They each want like 6 minutes of watering. So, and then over here I built, out of a old swing and some pallets, I built a potato bed, which is completely taken over now and is like falling over. I should put some boards, but I'm basically using the roof stout method of hanging them up after they were planted in straight up cow manure, composted, weathered cow manure. Last year, all my beds were just weathered cow manure from a local farm less than a mile away. It was super cheap. Everything thrived. This year, I decided to spend a little money to do some oceanic, it's called surf and turf compost. I wish I knew the exact brand name, as it's popular in Maine. You can see shells in it, and I thought for sure it would be great. They boast that vegetables do wonderful in it. And I mixed it with manure, but I don't think I had the right ratio, and a lot of things burnt up at first. So I think it's probably higher in, with all the shells, like in the calcium and things that maybe not every plant appreciates. So I learned my lesson a bit there. And next year I'm going back to straight cow manure. It just works. We have our own compost to mix in. We never have enough to fill the beds, but it adds something. I'm just gonna say, it's real life. I have a fussy toddler that I'm trying to bring on a garden tour, and guess who doesn't care about garden tours? Fussy toddlers. So she's over in the corner now with Mickey Mouse as our background, because that's life, and I have to entertain her for the next 10 minutes.
You do what you gotta do.
She's over there in the shade, loving life now. Mickey Mouse, man, he saves the day. So then, this is the original U-shaped bed that I was talking about, that's kind of like kitty cornered in the garden. I tried growing a lot in this year. This was the bed that hated that compost the most. So, I planted about 300 or so carrots. This patch over here is the only patch that grew steadily. The sunflowers took over the rest of the carrots.
Oh yeah.
And nothing grew there except for sunflowers. There's like 3 carrots growing and 1 pea. It didn't work out very well. All of my peas that I planted along the back didn't really do anything. There's only a couple that are growing up now. My pole beans over here are looking good. Some of them took up the trellis in the back. Some of them are gonna, this is like an old bowl rack that I threw in my garden that I've had forever. And some twigs. Last year these grew little arms, but this year they're pretty dead, so that should be good. Red onions. Those over there are white and yellow, and they were doing so good at first. It's not that they're not doing good now, I don't think. It's just that they're all like bent over. So I don't know if I didn't give them enough support or if they hated the compost.
That's funny.
I'm not sure what's going on. It could also be the chipmunk, to be really honest with you,
Right.
like running through, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's happening there.
Because it almost looks like they're pushed over, like
Yes.
the wind or...
I don't know. So I'm not sure why that. I feel like I have to learn from that experience because I planted a ton of onions and I was really hoping. So our biggest thing that we do from this garden, and the reason I have so many tomatoes and peppers, is because we jar sauce. Last year we jarred 25 jars of sauce. I love canning. I like making a thing of it. I love eating our vegetables from our garden all winter. And it was really successful last year. And this year, with the onions not doing as well, I'm wondering how that's going to be. I may have to obviously buy onions from elsewhere, which is fine. But I'd like to eventually be like solely...
Right. Everything in this jar.
Yeah, just make enough of it that it's all of ours.
Yeah.
So,
Self-sustainable.
yes. So beans, peas, volunteer sunflowers.
Those are all volunteers?
These are all volunteers.
Jeez.
I noticed things popping up and I'm like, that's not a carrot. But it definitely looks like something. And then as it got a little bigger, I'm like, it's a sunflower. So now I felt, again, when
Right.
life creates itself, I feel like I can't tell it where it needs to live. So instead of pulling them and letting the carrots thrive, I let the sunflowers thrive. But beauty in the garden is really special to me, so that's fine. Spinach over here is going to seed, but this is the one
Yeah.
I've gotten the most out of. And then our lettuce. I planted like 3 different types of lettuce. Only 2 came up,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. It's just...
It's probably the heat. We've
This
had
season was a little
really-
weird. It was
yeah.
a lot of heat, and then we'll have like 6 days of rain. So like if something doesn't love heat or doesn't love rain,
Yeah.
it's surviving and thriving different weeks of the year. Anyway, it's fine. But I have been making salads out of this. I did it high intensity and I didn't pick it quick enough. So a lot of the edges and stuff are rotting. But I've been picking in between each one every day and making a salad. So that is lovely. Yeah, so that's all this bed really. You'll see a couple little jars of flowers here and there, little pots of flowers. I love that. My sister gave me these really cute little black signs to put in them. This one says, I'm rooting for you. And then this one says, let it grow. So anyway, those are cute. I have pots of tomatoes that I couldn't bring myself to get rid of.
I have like 6 of those in my garden right now.
I guess I need to
Just
put them in a
sitting
bigger
there.
pot because they need to do better than what they're doing, but they're still living and I feel like I can't kill them. Ugh. So anyway, I'm letting them live. So over here in one of these little square beds with an archway, I have watermelons.
Mm-hmm.
4 watermelon plants that are growing up trellises and eggplants in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Marigolds in the front, and I planted sunflowers on the other side, so we'll see what happens with those. And then on the back side, I have Tommy apple melons.
Ooh, what is that?
They were from, what's the place we love getting our heirloom seeds from? Baker's Creek.
Yeah.
So they were from Baker Creek. They're a small, like, handheld melon, and I think they're a version of honeydew or cantaloupe, something in between that. So our family goes through crazy amounts of fruit in the summer, melon especially. So I thought I would try and grow some. Maine is not the best for growing
Right.
melon. We don't really get hot enough
Right.
to sustain the heat the melons need. So I actually kept the melons in the greenhouse, which is like 120 degrees, completely vented all the time throughout the night and day now. And I kept them in there until like 2 weeks ago
Yeah.
and just planted them out. But they're doing great out here now. So, and I don't think they minded the water either that we had the other day. And then on the back side, this is a volunteer. I'm pretty positive it's an acorn squash because that's what I had trellised last year, but I can't be totally sure. So as they start to grow some, I'll know more, but I think it's an acorn squash. We love acorn squash and winter squashes, so that's fine with me. And I was able to keep some downstairs. I don't really have a root cellar by any means. That's like a future goal of mine. But I was able to keep some last year in our basement and they stayed pretty good for a couple months. So if that's an acorn squash, awesome. And then underneath the archways, we also have an acorn squash here. And the other 3 are called GS Benning squashes. I've never grown them. They're a type of winter squash. But they look like they're doing well now. They struggled a little bit at first. And now I can see a couple of them starting to put off fruit, so that'll be good. And then cucumbers along the back will grow up this red trellis.
Nice.
And then some more brassicas. And then I put some Gerber daisies in the front just for fun. We just built out our final bed. because we have a garden party for my daughter's birthday each year in September, when this thing is like covered in leaves and full bloom and gorgeous. And I realized I had planted a lot of different vegetables and I hadn't planted any cutting flowers. And I had bought a ton of seeds for cutting flowers. So this whole bed in the back is going to be, so the whole left side will be corn stalks, because even if they don't end up growing long enough to get corn, I use the stalks for decorating a ton in the fall.
Right.
So this will all be corn, and the whole right hand side will be flowers, runner flowers in the back, like morning glories and stuff.
Cool.
And then all over I have like kiss me over the gate, or like lots of like tall droopy flowers. And then I also have like zinnias and other cutting flowers that will just be pretty to put in bouquets around September and August. So that's the goal here for this bed, but like I said, I haven't filled it with the cow manure yet. We've got to go get that this week. My sister made these little tire seats. I've thrown them around the yard now. Originally they were meant to be for the kids, but honestly, I love them. It's great to pop a squat wherever you want. It's so comfortable. And then so I had a really old carport that was like a fort for my son. And instead I bought this year the greenhouse cover for it. It was like $100 online. And then inside I built the shelves myself. And then this year I had my first greenhouse.
That's so cool.
I was able to grow some things outside, which was really, really wonderful. You know, the only pain in the ass thing about it, I guess, is that you have to remember to vent it every morning and close it up every afternoon at the beginning of the season here in Maine. But it was really wonderful. And now it's a garden storage space for me too. So everything we use regularly in the garden, we keep in here. And so now it's out of our tool shed, and my husband has his little workshop. I say his workshop, but really I use that stuff way more often than he does. But anyway, it's a fun little space.
It's hot.
And it stays vented all the time, but it's about 120 in here regularly.
Wow.
So that's this garden. I did add some flower boxes around the fence post just for fun.
Yeah.
Our first mailbox topper over there with the number 8. I have the 8. I'm going to be spray painting it. Is over there. Just like little birdhouses and things for fun. And then I have one more garden. It's a memorial garden. Kids made me this for Mother's Day. Isn't it the cutest sign ever?
I love that.
I love Jack's potato. I built this out of pallet. I'm calling it the potting shed. It's kind of a drink stand. When we have parties, we put our drinks up here. So a big anchor in the middle is our memorial garden for our son Miles that we lost in 2015. And it's just kind of a reflective space for me. I love seeing it. He's part of our life forever, and this kind of like just allows him to be part of our everyday life in the backyard. Got a bunch of flowers for it this year that will come back every year. And this cool bike my sister brought me, we put succulents in just a couple days ago, so that should fill in soon. We have a pretty lilac in the spring. This is lovely. And we're making little stepping stones for our milestones. And we'll put them all around. This is kind of a fun space too, right?
All right, so there you have it. That was Over the Garden Gate with Kate.
With me.
Our first little garden tour
There
at
it
Kate's
is.
Garden. Yay!
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, check in for the next one for sure. See ya.
Bye.
Was Over the Garden Kate. Knew that was gonna happen. Bloopers.